In this video, I want to explain what I mean by initial awakening and deeper into awakening. So, what I consider to be an initial awakening is that moment or period of time when you realize that you're not what you thought you were, when you realize that reality is not what you thought it was. This can present in a ton of different ways. So, I guess refer to my other videos for some of the experiences that might be involved in this. But what happens for most everyone is that this realization that life is not what you thought changes the entire way you experience your life and the world. You might change practical things like your job or your relationships or your diet. But really, these changes are coming from a deeper understanding about what it means to be human or what this reality actually is. So, this is what I refer to as initial awakening, because you are at a place where you realize that you're awakening. Even if you don't use that word, that's fine. You realize that something is different. And this begins a process. Usually, for most people, this is a process that occurs over many years. For some, it's much quicker, for some, it's much longer. But this is the process of awakening. And this process of awakening, which begins after the initial awakening, involves seeing through everything you used to believe in and understanding more deeply or more fundamentally why the world that you thought was real isn't real. And it's fascinating watching videos on YouTube and seeing how people's process goes in so many different ways. So your experience of the awakening process could be vastly different than mine or vastly different than another person's. But the end result, if you make it to the quote unquote end or the next sort of shift in this process, is what I'll refer to as liberation. And basically, liberation is the experiential knowing that you are not the individual separate self. So many people will actually start to add to their self-concept when they undergo the initial awakening. They'll start to maybe disidentify with the idea of being a human and instead identify as being a soul or having a particular soul mission. And these are fine, wonderful, interesting experiences to have on the awakening journey. But ultimately, they are part of the process that will eventually lead you to the realization that you are not only not an individual self, you are also not an individual soul. You are, I want to use the word nothing, but if you're hearing that from a place before awakening, it means something different. So you're basically realizing that you're not solid, you're not permanent, you're not separate, you're not a self. And in spiritual traditions, I think they refer to this self as the ego. So you're not an ego. You are an activity of life. And the more you experience this, the more you embody the realization of not being a separate self, the closer you move towards liberation. And that is what I would call the end of the awakening process. However, there is really no end. The process will continue on after that into things like non-duality and probably other things that we are not yet aware of. So hopefully this made it a bit clearer what I'm talking about when I'm talking about initial awakening or the awakening process or liberation or the end of the awakening process.